Going on, guys? It's Bodhi right here. This video is titled Evolution of Woodcutting, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. More specifically, it's of course going to be about forestry, and I'll share some of my opinions on why I don't like forestry, but more importantly, why something like forestry could make its way into the game. It's also what I'm going to be taking a look at. So, the reason that it's titled Evolution of Woodcutting is of course because this is basically just evolution of combat, but just for woodcutting instead. It's doing the exact same thing. You take something that is extremely simplistic and then you turn it into some convoluted mess for no reason. Combat used to be just a wait turn-based game. Then it was changed into this whole thing, whole unrecognizable thing. And the same is true for woodcutting. Like it's sort of like losing its identity in a sense. It's taking woodcutting, which was very love skill and very simplistic skill that everyone enjoyed. Even casuals seem to be enjoying woodcutting, and then it's turned it into like an event mess for no reason. Like it introduces 20, 30 new items, 20, 30 new events that you have to deal and interact with. And it does so for no reason at all. There's no reason why we needed this. And it doesn't feel natural to woodcutting at all. It feels so out of place. So it's a bit surprising that they went for something like this, I think. Well, nothing really surprises me anymore, but it's just the fact that woodcutting was a pretty popular skill, even if it wasn't the fastest skill. It was still pretty popular among normies. Like, you have a lot of Alicia woodcutters in this game who just hop on the game just to chop some wood. So it's a bit surprising that they went for a rework for this skill. Not that I would have liked if they have gone for a rework for a skill that was deemed unpopular by the community. I definitely don't think it should rework skills, but it's still a bit surprising that they went for something like this, because woodcutting seemed to be in a good spot and a lot of skills have a lot of variety, so it's not clear why we would have to look into something like this. Like, to me, it seems like it's just change, just for the sake of change. But anyway, let's take a look at why it is the case that something like this can make it into the game. So one reason is of course that people love updates. It doesn't really matter so much whether the update is good or bad. It depends more on whether the rewards are good or bad, not whether engaging with the content itself is fun or not fun, or engaging or not engaging. People don't care so much about the content itself, but they do care about the reward space from the content. And change is always welcome, because if we take a look at something like this, so in the first example we have a default position which is woodcutting into forestry, and in the second example we have forestry into woodcutting. And both of these examples would pass a poll. Like, we have had woodcutting mechanics for 20 years, then we poll forestry mechanics changes to woodcutting, and they pass easily. But if it had been the case that we have had forestry mechanics with all of its events for 20 years, and we decided to poll woodcutting mechanics instead, like if we said, hey guys, forestry has a lot going on, should we maybe tone it down a little bit, make it more simplistic? And if they polled that with after having had forestry mechanics into the game for 20 years, it would absolutely pass the poll. So which one should we have? Because both of these questions would pass, so it doesn't seem clear whether we should have forestry mechanics or we should have woodcutting mechanics, since they both would pass a poll. The important thing here is only the rewards that come out of it really seem to matter here. Like, if forestry is more rewarding than woodcutting, then people would rather want forestry. And if woodcutting is more rewarding than forestry, then people would rather want woodcutting. So it seems that forestry only has some popularity. It's a very controversial update in itself, but it only has some popularity because of the fact that it's pretty rewarding. Like it makes woodcutting easier and faster. And if that wasn't the case, I don't think people would really enjoy it, and I don't think people would approve of a change like this. So it only hinges on whether it's rewarding or not rewarding. And you can take a look at something like take a look at Korean favor as well. Korean favor making it into the game easily passed the poll. Removing Korean favor from the game again easily passed the poll. And the reason why something like this can make it into the game and then get removed from the game is because first of all it's a change, but then since current favor doesn't make the game easier, then they don't want current favor anyway. So the removal is also approved. And if you look at something like Guardians of the Rift, for example, I think that's not a good example. People seem to enjoy Guardians of the Rift, but in my opinion, they only do so long as it's very rewarding. Like Guardians of the Rift push the RC rate uh, up above that of the old lava RC rate, and you get that with just AFKing for half of the game, and now you're getting lava raids, which took a lot of effort to acquire back in the day. So of course something like this is gonna be extremely popular because it's insanely rewarding. Like even if Guardians of the Rift was only 20k XP per hour, it would still be a very good method because it still has good rewards. It's still very AFK. It's less effort than Abyss RC, and Abyss RC is only 25k, and it has better rewards than Abyss RC. So even if it had like an extremely low rate, it would still have its place in the game. But because the rates are so insanely high, 70 to 80k, depending on what method you do, of course, then of course something like this is gonna be insanely popular. And it's not because they think that Guardians of the Rift is good content in itself. Of course, they enjoy the fact that it's very FK, but it's more so the fact that it's very rewarding that's important here. So the fact that that's the reason why we have something like forestry. It's because it's a change, and people love change, and it makes woodcutting easier, and people love things that makes the game easier. They will always approve of things that makes the game easier. And not only these two things, but it's also the fact that we have a community who is largely in favor of RS3-esque updates. And skilling reworks are really popular on RS3. And something that routinely gets brought up on Reddit, for example, is whether we could rework mining and smithing. And to me, it's just a bit weird that there seems to be so many people in favor of mining smithing rework. Like, first of all, it doesn't really make any sense that you bundle these two together. I know that the ores used for mining are used in smithing as well, but I think the connection between the two skills pretty much stops there because mining has so much variety. It has so many methods, and mining has changed a lot over the years, but smithing not as much. So when people say that they should rework both of them, I think it's just because they're a little too NPC-esque in their minds. They browse Reddit a little bit too frequently because it doesn't really make any sense to compare these two things. But also when it comes to a smithing rework, like people always refer to, oh, rune armor is the best armor that we can smith, but smithing is so much more than just smithing rune armor. And this is not so much. It's not even an issue with only being able to smith rune. It's more so an issue with armor, I think, because it's mostly that the prayer skill makes armor redundant, so it doesn't really matter what armor you have. Like even if you could smith, let's say dragon armor, if we could go a tier above rune, it wouldn't really change anything. It would pretty much be the same thing, so long as it doesn't provide any strength bonuses. and you can easily get a quest cape with a just get it with just having rune armor, or you don't even need any rune or any armor to get a quest cape. So it's hard to see that we should have something like a rework for either mining or smithing. But suggestions like these are very popular among people, among redditors that is. So that's why I also think that um, when something like a woodcutting rework was proposed, they have been so wired by the idea that they want a mining smithing rework that they also think, oh, we also need a woodcutting rework. And it's very sad to see like so many skills are in a good place, and we don't need a complete overhaul. Like updates should complement the game; they should not completely alter the game into something that is unrecognizable. And I kind of fear for the future when it comes to skill reworks, because we've seen in the past that when Jagex gets an idea for something, they will take that idea and they will run with it. They will apply it to everything that it possibly can. This is the case, for example, with something like um, when they wanted to have it so you could make X for one thing, they took this idea and just applied it to everything that they could think of. So make X for one single thing becomes make X for everything. And when they added this shift click to drop thing, then soon after you could shift click to do anything, to change everything. And the same with menu entry swapping. You can menu entry swap one thing. A couple months later, you can menu entry swap everything. When they add a mini game for one skill, a couple months later, you have a mini game for all skills. And I think we will see even more mini games for even more skills. And it's just turned into like mini gamescape for no reason at all. And I think minigames still have a place, of course, but not to the extent that we're seeing right now, where it's just the meta that you do minigames for all skills. It's kind of lame. And also, for example, another thing is when they had around the time when we got Vorkath and Sock, for example, they would have these one hit to kill mechanics. We saw that with Vorkath, we saw it with Sock, we saw it with the Galvik, the boss in DS2. So when they get this idea, they love to take it and apply it to everything. And that could certainly be the case for something like forestry or woodcutting rework as well. And it's very worrying if this is applied to all skills in the game. If we are gonna see more reworks later down the line, it'll be very sad to see. And another point that I want to make is that, so since this is basically evolution of combat, but just for woodcutting, like how would how would evolution of combat actually fare today if it was polled? I think if we just straight up polled evolution of combat now for the game, I'm fairly convinced that it would fail the poll. Evolution of combat would not be a popular update. It's the reason that we even have this game in the first place. But let us suppose that hypothetically we had no recollection of a prior game. We have, if we just had old school RuneScape, but it's not because EOC ever existed. It was just because we wanted a fresh start. If we assume that that was the case and no one knew anything about EOC, I am 99% sure that if they polled EOC, it would pass the poll. Simply because of the fact that people love change, and if you make EOC feel rewarding, they have to just do the marketing work really well. If they just market this update to combat really well, it will be very easy to sell people. Like you would just say, "Oh, combat has been the same for 20 years. It's getting a bit stale now. We should change it up." If you just sell it on those sort of talking points that you always use, it would be so easy to pitch this idea to the people, and the masses would just consume it right away. So I am 99% sure that if they polled EOC today, and we didn't know, and we had no recollection, EOC had never been a thing in the past. It didn't exist in RS3. It never existed before. No one knew what it was. Then I'm absolutely certain that it would pass the poll, just because of how positive people are towards updates. Like it's almost impossible to get anything to fail. There are really two types of updates that fail the poll. One is PvP updates, and the reason PvP updates fail the poll, it is not so much because they want to spite PvPers. They do want to spite PvPers, but it's only because it benefits themselves. It's because they don't want to give, let's say, they don't want to add a PvP weapon that is very strong, because if they add a PvP weapon that is very strong, then it's more easy to kill someone who is doing a clue, and they don't want that. So when people are voting no to PvP updates, it's because they are egotistical. So that's one type of update that fails. And another type of update that would fail the poll is if you poll the nerf, for example. Nerfs don't do well in polls, which is why they never really poll. They only put in as an integrity change. If JX considers it an integrity issue, which they rarely do. So I'm convinced that something like EOC would do very well on a poll if we assume it's the hypothetical scenario where we don't know that what EOC was. We had no idea what it would be like or anything. Then I absolutely believe that it would pass the poll. Um, what's I gonna say? Um, yeah. So the next point I think I want to end on is I think I want to say two more things maybe. So one is about to like, some people are saying that, okay, maybe we should have been without the forestry events. We should have been without the all the items that came from forestry, and we should only have made a couple of changes to the tree mechanics and stuff. So like, they wanted to have it so we would get the new tree mechanics of the tree spawn timers. So instead of being a chance based thing when you chop the log, now all trees would be on a timer as well, and so you wouldn't get punished for woodcutting with other people. You would actually be rewarded uh, by woodcutting with other people. That is one change that people thought, okay, this is actually a good thing to come out of forestry. But even this thing about forestry I don't like, because I believe that competition for resources is good, and I don't really think it's cool that 15 people are stood under the same tree and chopping it. I think it's cooler when you go out of your way to find an empty world, to find empty trees. And it's so easy when we have so many worlds, not too many people playing on the worlds, they're not too populated. It's actually very easy to find worlds. So I just disagree with the whole idea that this was a good part as well from forestry, or it's a part that we could have without all the other things. But even this I disagree on. And also when it comes to two-handed axes, like, if you wanted to add two-handed axes, it should work in the opposite way that it works now. So we should you should get extra logs, but you should get less XP, rather than getting more XP but less logs. It shouldn't be an increase in experience. And some people have defended it, like the tree mechanics and the two-handed axes, but I think these two should. I don't really like these two changes either. And I guess the last thing that I want to say when it comes to this, I think I want to wrap up the video soon, is that um, a common talking point among NPCs is that if you don't like something, don't use it. And this is not some magic spell that you can just cast to deflect criticism, because you don't really when people say this, they don't actually believe it. Like they believe it in situational circumstances, but they don't believe it as a categorical truth. So people should refrain from saying stupid stuff like this. Like it's such a stupid talking point that I didn't, I didn't really want to entertain it when I first heard it because of how fucking stupid it is. Like, like it is the case with the evolution of combat that if you don't like evolution of combat, you can choose to not use it. You don't have to use the abilities. It's just the case that if you choose to not use the abilities on your action bar, then you will be severely disadvantaged. And this is the exact same case for forestry and for so many other updates where people come up with this argument. Just don't use it. Like, dude, this is the case for everything. And it's such a weak argument that it doesn't really have any footing in a common sense place. So I think people should refrain from saying stupid stuff like this that they don't even believe in. Like if you ask people, well, you could have it so that you could start off with max cape, twisted bow, max cash from tutorial island, and then people could just choose to not use that feature. But no one really believes this would be good for the game if you could just start off with max cash and T-bow and everything. Of course, people might now say that I'm appealing to extremes or whatever, but this simply just goes to show that not liking something followed by so therefore you shouldn't use it, it only makes sense in situational circumstances. For example, it would be true for something like green dragons. I don't like killing green dragons, so I'm not killing green dragons, right? It makes sense in this situation. There are situations where you can make that argument, but you cannot use it as a categorical truth that is true at all times. So people should refrain from this garbage that they don't even believe in themselves. And like this is just so stupid. Like I would want to have like a good discussion about it, but I just know that people who forward this position, they are so bad faith and they don't actually believe it. They're just using the lamest talking points that they've gotten from Reddit. That is so fucking stupid. But I think I'll r- wrap it up here because I've been rambling for long enough. So yeah, see you in the next one.